So I was thinking maybe we could do something a little bit different because I'm just so completely overwhelmed by like all of your kind of I just feel so grateful that I feel like your whole experience in crypto is like available to experience for other people, which I think is really unique. And so I would love to almost get like a guided tour of what like crypto looks like to you. So I wonder if we could try kind of like just maneuvering around like your gallery and crypto voxels and anything else you want to show us on your site and just like have a bit more context for your experience.
Sick. Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Cool. So I wonder if we could, if you could just like let us know where we are and even
Sure.
like how you came to just like purchase a parcel in crypto voxels. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, okay. So basically, what's really cool about this is that we are in the Black Arts District. So as you can see here, there's like some stuff with Connie Digital. This is my parcel with one off called the House of Heat. And we have put out our my solo show Intermission, which is in this building. But if you move around a little bit, you should see somewhere there's the Black Scran project that's being made at some point. Some of the stuff probably just hasn't loaded yet. Black NFTs, Craig Blackmore, the one-off collection. This is the Black Scran project. Yeah, there we go. So one off here. There's also a park. But all this is part of what's called the Black Arts District, where there are a group of us, maybe 20 or so artists,
Wow.
that have parcels all around here to show off our work and to kind of create like a really interesting community experience. So I'm happy to be a part of this one-off. Basically had purchased over 30 parcels and started to give them out to artists that they aligned with, and I happen to be one of them. So very blessed to be a part and to make something cool.
Yeah, this is incredible. And I love, like, I spent a bit of time in your gallery and I just, like, loved how comfortable it was. I definitely felt like I stepped into the future in the sense that I could imagine, like, taking time out from, like, work and just, like, hanging out. I love just, like, the seats, and it was funny, but, like, the fact that it was by the water and crypto voxels like still gave me the same vibes of being by the water in real life. So
That's
I
a
thought that was really interesting.
fact. So cool. It's so cool.
So cool.
Yeah, I was a big fan of leveraging this space, and the one off team did a good job just kind of like surprising me with it, because they were like, yo, check out this House of Heat that we're making, and I'm like, oh, gotta do something here. And yeah, like
Cool.
it's super inviting with like the seats, and it's got like the flame here, and like these orbs are really cool because these are a part of a trilogy of audio clips from my time in Japan. I was at a secret party that they host like once a year, but it's random. They never tell you the actual date and time. You just kind of have to be
Okay.
around, and if you know a person that knows when it's happening, they'll tell you the day before.
What?
Yeah, it's kind
That
of
sounds amazing.
it's crazy.
Oh,
But yeah, so this is like the really cool like thing. I always like tell people to spend some time with this, because I think the audio, if you play all of it, it's about 20. Let me see. Wait, three. It's about 22 minutes. So you kind of get a really cool mood set, and like if you play
yeah.
one, you can kind of like still move around and kind of see everything and all that other kind of stuff as well. But it's a really cool vibe setter. Um,
Yeah.
Other than that, you kind of have like, oh god, you were saying something.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, when you record something like those moments, are you thinking like, is it just how you are? You're just like capturing your life all the time, or are you thinking about like creating in that moment, or you just kind of go back and you're just like, oh, actually, I could turn this into something.
So literally the DJ was incredible the whole night. And he
Okay.
was playing stuff that I was like, yo, I have no idea where this is from. I need this song somehow. So I was recording mainly because the dude his song selection was like unreal. But what happened is, so I managed to take a good amount and figured out most of the songs through Shazam,
Okay.
and like just asking around. And in one of the recordings, it's funny, you'll hear me say that I got a match, which is like in a Shazam song. I was so gassed because the song that was being played was just like so good. But yeah, I most of the time I'm not really a person that records much of anything that's happening. Like being in the moment for me is like I'm either in the moment or I'm not. And if I'm not in it, then I'm probably like in something else, like my work or whatever. But being in the moment, then for the most part, everything else is kind of gone. I'm just really focused on what's happening at that time, and I've relied heavily on my memory and my emotion to kind of like carry out the truth of that experience over time, even if like some of the details get a little wonky. But for the most part, it's like I usually preserve that because it's the feeling of being in the thing. For me, that's a lot more powerful sometimes than just kind of like let me go ahead and capture it. But I've started to think about capturing things more, mainly because you never really know how good your memory is or how vivid something is until it's gone. So it's a lot more pressing for me now to be more of a documentarian of my own experience. And I'm usually a really good documenter of other people's experiences, but of my own, I wanted to kind of take a lot more an active role in that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's see, and then moving around, kind of get like a couple different sides of myself, which is pretty fun. And then one of the first things that I did when I got into the space was I built a guide on making NFTs and just like being a crypto creator. And what I had done was I took 5 posts on Instagram, 5 days for 1 week for about 2 months, and kind of just like put people through these courses on Clubhouse last year, like from November to January.
Wow.
And it was really cool because at the time, Lady Phoenix was like one of the only other people talking about NFTs in a way that was approachable. And I felt that there needed to be more people that were doing that. So I took it upon myself to kind of like make a course. And it worked out. It really helped me understand more of the concepts of how to turn this space into what you want. But then also got me in line with so many credible artists that I could work with, or that I could like put them in spaces where they can do their best work. And it was I was so happy to see how certain artists were able to thrive and build a career in this space than trying to find like traditional gallery. And then even in certain cases, we were able to even have certain artists get into gallery. Like one of the artists that I represent through Mint Fund, a.k.a. Cavalcante, they're a non-binary artist out of Brazil, and we got them into Sotheby's to do an auction, part of Natively Digital. And that was a great experience, not just for me as a developer of artists, but I think it really put a light on the space and kind of showed that underrepresented artists and people from a global stage also deserve the same type of experiences and opportunities that folks in most Western society usually can tap into. So it was a very fun full circle moment of teaching people how to be crypto creators and then actually seeing them perform in the space. So that's always like a really cool like permanent guide I want to have just anywhere.
That's awesome. I wonder as well, like there seems, in my experience at least, there is like this tug of war between like these legacy institutions, like galleries and, especially Sotheby's, and kind of what is happening in crypto and these crypto native institutions. And like, it's, when you say it, I get that it's a really big deal and that it matters. And I wonder how other people feel, like what do you think like the general tone is in terms of I feel like you only don't care about those legacy institutions if it was never an issue for you to get into them. If maybe like you don't kind of appreciate, like it's just like the path that you were always on, say, and from the outside, it seems like a really big deal if you get into an exhibition at Sotheby's. And so I just like wonder how do you think that will evolve? Or like what have you seen in terms of how people are responding to legacy institutions, especially in art, like merging with the metaverse?
I think for certain people it's a great thing for them, and I think for other folks, we've understood sort of the generational like exploitation that traditional legacy institutions have. And it's not just like auction houses, which obviously are rooted in other things that they used to auction, i.e. folks, people. But then the same thing when it comes to museums. A lot of that stuff, for example, we look at the Tate Modern, or if we look at the MoMA or some other places, some of them have works that have been donated by families that have exploited, that have been part of grave robbing, have been part of like archaeology, which is usually exhuming bodies of very pertinent or important or non-important people, for instance, but not returning those artifacts, not returning those bodies, not returning, those people back into where they were buried. So like the sanctity of that tradition, or the sanctity of whatever sort of spirituality or customs or culture that those people who were here long before us had, has been interrupted, and with no real means of kind of like returning those things back to where they were. So there's a huge underlayer of damage that's done to a lot of actual real cultures that may or may not exist anymore, based upon how they've been displayed and how they've been used. And so for me, I've always been leery about working with traditional institution. My only thing is that if I'm able to find ways to collaborate that gets them to undo some of their past wrongs, then that's the only way I'm going to actually like interact and work with legacy institutions. Other than that, I'm of the mind of finding ways to remove them, and to restore, I suppose like justice to the communities in which their artifacts have been stolen from them, because most of them don't even have committees or even have like the ability to reclaim their identities based upon the artifacts that have been taken. But other people are making tons of money and writing that history of these cultures without consulting the cultures themselves. And so I find that to be very unethical. So that's sort of like my thing. But I mean, traditional institution wants to get into the space. I think it's our job as cultural communities to tell them that if you do, then you have to play on our terms, because this is a more self-sovereign way of life within this construct, and as such, then we need to reclaim rightful ownership of our things, and that we're giving you now permission to do things with them, not the other way around. And when we're really able to do that from a consistent standpoint and at scale, then we'd really start to see something change.
Yeah, it's really interesting how, when you walk off the street into a gallery, you kind of take it at face value, like it's just a building and there's no accessible kind of record of the history or the of how the institution has evolved. But I feel like with the tools that we have with crypto and the blockchain, all of that is changing. And so kind of if you look forward, decades into the future, you can see that the communities that are being created now, like their history will always be accessible, and that's a really big part of it. So I guess that's like a really big difference. And I think culturally, like we're getting there, that stories matter, and that that communities matter in how you do things, and your actions will always be kind of tied to your name in a way that they aren't in the physical world. It just seems so easy to kind of like wash your hands of your past, and then keep, like you said, like moving, making money. and doing the same old thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how the internet has like this ability, almost like when you're in school, like in high school, and then you finally go to college, and especially if you go to one away from where you're from, then it's almost as if you're all that's gone.
Yeah.
I'm a new person now. But you realize the past is always there, and everything that you've done is always there, whether or not you externally show it, or kind of like try to hide it away from people. It always builds itself up to the surface. So, it's almost like, how does one accept and come to terms with the past, so then they can now shape whatever their new present future is, in a way that suits something that's better, not only for themselves but for the world around them. And that's like a constant struggle that I think all of humanity tries to figure out. But I think the more of us that really intentionally work on that, I think the better. But yeah. I'm trying to see if there's what else I can show that's not the exhibition, but let's see here. We have this. I wonder if all of my NFTs will show up. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
And so, did your journey with NFTs start? Like, when did that start, and what has, like, especially this kind of these dots that you've connected over the last couple of months or over the last year? Like, what does that journey look like for you?
Oh man. So I mean, it started. Actually, this is great, because I'll just do it like this. So my journey started pretty simply, actually. So one of my great friends, Leighton, or Late Effects, he basically put me on to NFTs.
Okay.
I'm not like I wasn't new to blockchain. I'd been working in blockchain since 2016. I wrote an ICO for a startup called Romeo in 2017. Worked with Celsius 2018. Did some work for Consensus, i.e. through Gitcoin, and participating in hackathons. Got second place. At the same time, I was in Japan, so that was really fun doing an artist residency. And then 2020, Leighton tells me about Rarible, and kind of everything sort of starts to make sense.
Wow.
Yeah, like before I was doing blockchain for healthcare, supply chain management, construction, the gig economy, but not the creator economy, not anything related to art, not anything related to content or general media. And so he was like, yeah, I'm selling a filter, and I think, let me see if I can find it. It's in one of his this is his new project that he's working on. Will I be able to see it? Okay. We're gonna do it this way. This is gonna be faster. Man. There it is. Okay, cool. All right, so he showed me this. And I was like, yo, you could sell these? I thought you can only just get them on Instagram. And he was like, nah, dude, I want to sell them on Rarible. And I'm like, what? So I make my Rarible account.
Wow.
I had in my illustration work, let me go back to it. So these cast of characters were called Sirens, and I made a whole graphic novel project of them being sort of like musicians. I grafted some of that and then put it in on my Rarible account and made cards because I saw that
Okay.
like trading collectible cards were kind of like an interesting sort of thing that was working. So I made a few of these. So here's like one of them, for instance. And I put like a whole story out and kind of was like figuring out how I was gonna like make a game out of this, so on and so forth. And a lot of people liked it, but there was no price activity. Maybe for about 7 or 8 weeks.
Okay.
But it was interesting because I really wanted to sort of explore how to best interact in the space. And I think for me, I was like, even if they don't sell, the fact that I'm pushing out work with what I believed at the time, some level of polish and some level of, of strange and a really cool concept and idea, that people would at least watch out for me to see what else I might do, because of the fact that I'm thinking about things in a different way than what other people may not be thinking about. And it ended up really, really, really paying off much later. At the same time, I created a project called Digital Bodies, which was going to be an on-chain publication dealing with consciousness around decentralized spaces. And so for the first issue, I kind of put out a bunch of different like pieces, some collaborative works, both artifacts called artifacts and broadcasts. A broadcast is both kind of like an artifact, but not necessarily. It's more like these are more like poster based works with messages. So hence a broadcast, but a visual broadcast in a sense. So I was inspired a lot by, and this is like a lot of like rooted in my entire art process. So like the Designers Republic, so the folks that were responsible for like Wipeout and all this other really cool like dub stuff in the late 90s, early 2000s. A comic book artist, Phil Noto and Ashley Wood, and an abstract portrait artist named Jason Thauk, who's trained as an architect but went into fine art. So those are where all my experiences kind of like, or like my influences congealed together, and then boom, like I'm making like work. But because I'm doing digital stuff, I leaned heavily into a lot of the Designers Republic sensibilities of things. And then I had done a set of broadcasts called CRT Madness, which was sort of like taking a very old kind of like concept of technology, but pushing it into the future and seeing what that would look like. And this was a really cool collaboration with a good friend of mine named Mez Visuals. And it was my first collaborative project in the space, and that garnered the two of us some really cool attention. The idea was to again blend not just like visuals, but then full blogs, whether they're audio or written word, as an accompaniment to the pieces. For me, like when I heard that storytelling was sort of like everything in this space, I wanted to really see how I could explore storytelling from all angles, whether it's just talking about a concept through marketing, or actually really adding lore bits and pieces to the work. So same thing here, pretty static, but interesting notes there. Same thing with this. All this stuff is it was a very fun and interesting project. I really enjoyed working on it. It kind of tested a lot of my concepting and figuring out how to create sort of like micro stories within a given image.
And so with like this form of media, did you feel like you mentioned it was kind of like everything coming together? Did it feel like that, or that also you were adapting to kind of like the tools that were available to you? Like, do you think that you would have got to this place with this expression kind of but for being in the space?
No, I don't think this space sort of challenged me to actually get back into art. And because for a long time, I think after university, I wasn't really doing much in art anymore. when I moved to Nashville, towards the end of my time there, I got inspired to convert my apartment into a gallery, which is what I did. I had one of my really good friends, Luis Corzo, he's a Guatemalan photographer, bring his works called Human Nature into he sent me all of his photos, and then let me see if I can actually find it here. Yeah, he sent me all of his photos, and then please tell me to load. Here we go. Okay, great. And I printed them all out. He had them in different formats, like paper, like 8x10, 4x6, 5x7, and I littered them all over my apartment. And then I created a book that sort of like had like a foreword and like a real cool physical experience, and kind of just like mapping out all of his different photos and doing some really cool crops. And it's for him, he wanted to sort of examine the physical world of human nature against sort of like the actual nature that we're surrounded by. And I just thought it was a really compelling body of work. And this is funny too, because he had a lot of books that I wanted to read, and he wanted to sell on consignment. And so I started this project, Sirsu Goods, as an attempt to get access to a bunch of publishers so I can read as much as I want, but then also kind of like lightly sell books whenever I got the impetus to want to like push out that I had books to sell. But mainly I kind of selfishly just bought up quantity so that I could read them myself and then give them out to people. So it's not a sustainable business in that context. But it gave me a channel, an avenue to explore art, but just without me actually doing any, but to amplify others. So this was sort of like I think I was getting primed to really figure out how to promote an NFT culture, mainly due to the fact that I was already doing it with my friends before, just kind of like as a fun thing. But as he gave me all these books to put on consignment, he showed me this project, and I was like, dude, I gotta fly you out to Nashville and like I'm gonna like do a show.
What?
Wow,
that's amazing.
So we did this show in my apartment, and it was really fun. Like, I had a lot of people show up, had a really cool after party, and I was like, wow, like gallery, this is cool. I like this. I want to hold on to this idea for a little bit. And yeah, I mean, I did everything kind of like that you would find sort of like in a gallery. Like we did. So yeah, I had a bunch of books I was selling. And then, let me see, I think clothes. So then I also made, some merchandise. Here's the main thing. And then here's some of his like really good like photos from the actual exhibit, and then the book, and then like two things here. So I really did it up. I was like, we're gonna make this like a whole actual experience and make it feel just like you would go to a gift shop and everything like that. So
yeah.
But yeah, it got me really primed to do all of this stuff. And I don't think I would have been able to do it had I not gotten into this space, I think, and had I not been into Japan with the artist residency. Like me and art, we were falling out of like I didn't really enjoy doing it as much anymore. And then this space sort of reinvigorated that love, and gave me a challenge, most importantly. And then I was able to fall back in love into art because I was challenged to make really new and compelling work.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's so, I just feel like very optimistic hearing you kind of share that, thinking of all of the people around the world who are creative but are not kind of inspired with the tools that are available or the ways of doing things, but might discover things in this space to kind of reinvigorate their inspiration.
I think the every artist should be challenged to dig deep within themselves and to find a story that they want to tell, something that's resonant. It's how you grow. It's how you explore other mediums. It's how you become sort of a true expert in your craft, when you have challenge and when you have resistance. If things just kind of go swimmingly or go one way without you sort of like shaking it up, it becomes monotonous, or at least for me, it become monotonous and unfun. And so I wanted to really find ways to remove that, and to bring the fun back, the fire back, and this space has certainly done that in spades.
Yeah, it's funny even just hearing you say that kind of you need that like challenge to grow. It makes me just like reflect on my own life and the things that I've done where I haven't done it with the intention of growing or prioritize my own growth, but just kind of done it to get to a point or an outcome, and why it feels so hollow once you get there. Yeah, things kind of clicking into place.
I'm trying to think now. Okay, so we talked about Rarible. We talked about digital bodies as like my first sort of like effort in the space. This was around November of last year. And then on Foundation and on Zora, I was experimenting with the medium here, mainly because at the time when I first talked to them, both Zora and Foundation were using tokens to trade IRL products, so like clothes and posters and other artwork, using crypto market trading to figure out supply and demand for your projects, but not in NFTs. And so they pivoted into NFTs in January of this year. And this is kind of like, so they've really only been out for less than like 8 months. If you think about and then you think about the impact that they've brought into the space since then.
Absolutely.
It's been incredible.
That's wild. I can't even I've lost all concept of time. I know there's that meme about like 7 years and like it must be like 1 month in crypto is like 7 years in a normal lifetime, but 8 months, that's really incredible. And I wonder, can you just like run me through the different platforms? So like Rarible, Zora, Super Rare, what do they mean to you? Like how do you use them differently, or and what does it depend on, kind of like which platform you use for which piece or which expression?
Yeah, so for me, Zora's open, permissionless. It's anarchy in its finest, and I love it. Zora is a place where if you want to do something, you do it, and you don't ask permission. You just get it done. And I love that about certain environments, because you need that. That's what shakes things up. That's what kind of gives you that fire. That's what inspires change, because who's going to tell you no? So I use them often. They're one of my favorites. I love the crew. I love what they represent, and they've helped me do so many things in the space as it relates to, for instance, being some of the first people that if I had an interesting idea that they would amplify it. If I wanted to create a platform or a space or a message, they would find ways to say, how can we help refine this for you? When it came to even starting the Mint Fund, for instance, they were like the first ones that said, yo, here's money, like find really dope artists and do really cool things. So I love them as a platform, and maybe it's because I've had the personal relationships I've had with them since before they even pivoted into NFTs that might have created a more of that, and it's the same for Foundation too. But I think I'm trying to plug this in because it's gonna die soon.
Okay.
Jeez, let me figure this out. Okay. But I think they are really about being a platform or a playground for really amazing ideas and helping you see them through. So I love Zora for that. Foundation is on the other end of the spectrum. Not that they're not about blowing shit up, but they're really about refinement, polish, detail. How does one represent their most elevated self within a space? Foundation helps facilitate that. I think because of their emphasis on experience and really ensuring that people have a pleasant time browsing the litany of art that exists on platform, really changes the game insofar as how people were approaching digital art. Now, Super Rare is an OG, Known Origin's an OG, right? There's no getting around that. They pioneered the space and in many ways got us to where we are today. So I can never take that away from either of them. At the same time, though, for the 4 years that they've been in play, or 3 years that they've been in play rather, since 2018, what has been shocking to me, or what I would have liked to have expected, I think, out of this space in general, and this is actually really kind of like more of a real conversation about crypto, was the lack of growth in refining an experience and making it better. When we think about typical consumer product culture, consumer service culture, or just services in general, polish and ease of use are of the utmost importance. And it's unfortunate that these platforms, even though they worked for how they worked, did not really think too much more about how to make that experience smoother, how to learn from some of the best places outside of the crypto sphere and bringing those things into it. It's the reason why within the 8 months that Foundation has exploded, because they understood the idea of ease of use and experience and polish means just as much as what you're actually doing on the site. Zora, on the other end, knows the importance of expression, unbridled expression, DIY culture, but still creating an accessible on-ramp to make those things possible. And then when you look at your maker's place, it's kind of like in a tier below Foundation. When you look at Nifty Gateway, for all the money that they've made, especially in the very beginning with the Beeple sale and so on and so forth, you would think their experience would be a lot more smoother, but it's not. When you think of Super Rare and Known Origin, both of them are riding off the fact that they're OGs, but you can teach old dogs new tricks, and it's better for them to want to figure out how to aggressively get after more like newer talent to then refresh their stuff because they need it, truthfully. But I will say, I give props to Known Origin, give me a shot. That's how I launched Digital Bodies. Most of that stuff is through there. Rebel was my first foray into the space because it was open, because Zora and Foundation were not at the time. So they gave me a lot of my initial thought process about the space. So I give them props, and I love what they're trying to do in bringing in more of the open and permissionless aspects that Zora's been doing. I love the fact that they are kind of, in a way, going after OpenSea too, whether they're aware of it or not. Rebel does have pretty strong secondary. And any other new platforms that are coming out, like myself and a few other things, I think our biggest challenge is really figuring out how we carve out a space. And it's not about trying to solve for everything. It's about solving for some things, some group of things very, very well. And if you're able to kind of figure out and carve out that niche, you can then eventually grow it into something bigger, if that's the plan. But you can also be successful staying niche as well. And so I'm very curious to see what other stuff comes as a result of this.
Yeah. And I wonder, just in terms of like that accessibility and ease of use in Polish is something that I kind of, that really resonates with me, seeing, especially I would say like with direct to consumer goods and e-commerce over the last, 5 to 10 years, the level of execution for me has just been incredible, where it seems very thoughtful and intentional. And I wonder, in terms of applying, or like just like getting to that stage with designers and the design of things in crypto, like what is it like? Is it just because I think about this even with like Solidity developers in the space. I think to myself, like in terms of recruiting more devs, I'm like, is someone going with like pizza to like React and JavaScript meetups like around the world and just like recruiting people? Like what do you do to bring designers into this place, so that it makes it kind of better for everyone if they're not here already?
That's a very good question. You gotta be curious, I think. Like I found the space just asking questions, or at least the broader blockchain space, just asking questions and like having an ear out for things. You gotta want to know what's going on in a sense, because it's not gonna always be apparent, which is weird for me to say, even because I'm a person that's always about we want to do our best to like educate and to bring so many people into a thing and build programming around this, that, and a third. But some of those things it's impossible to do because some of it's new. And people are asking me all the time too, like, well, how did you know about this? How did you know about that? I was like, I was just in the room. I just happened to be in the space when it was happening. Like, it's very hard to in that moment recognize when something is brand new to record it. And this goes back to the thing about me being more active about documenting like life and things, because sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation where you're at the cutting edge without even really realizing that you're at the cutting edge. And then when it happens, people are like, "Whoa, my God, like I didn't know about this." And it's like, well, nobody knew about this really. It just sort of happened. So in a way, if you're a designer, then your mind is always trained to ask questions. It's always trained to be curious. It's trained to be spontaneous. And you have to have courage to hop in something that is foreign to you, to learn and to have it show you things that you didn't see in yourself before. Because if you're fearful, then you don't have the audacity, the gumption to make change or to be a part of change, because you're too afraid. So you have to find ways to build courage, to hop into these spaces, even if you're afraid that you might look stupid, which is okay, because I look stupid all the time.
I feel like I actually wanted to ask you about this because I just would love to understand how you think about things in terms of experimentation and failure, and this idea that, everything is very public with what you're building. How, like, is there that fear, or what is the lens that you put on that experience so that you can kind of move through it, because you kind of create at such a prolific rate that it seems like you must have figured something out?
It's wild because when I got in the space, it was a slow grind. Well, maybe not a grind. In the moment, it felt like it. But now 8 months later, 9 months later, or a year later at this point, because I started last August, it flew by.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like, I'm an artist, I'm putting out some stuff. It's not really moving that well. Okay. Let me change something up. Who else in the space is cool that I could like talk to? Think is, whatever. So met up after through my crypto creator course, I was able to like link up with like folks like Sean Williams, like Sophie Sturdivant, who else? Mo, or he goes by Mobocop, for instance, and a great deal of other artists and folks in the space. And Lady Phoenix also like put me on to like so many different people. And so we just started to really engage in conversation through Twitter, and I would, if I thought something that they made was really dope, I would retweet it, and I'd wax poetic about why the work is cool. And I think maybe because I have traditional artist training, I can speak about art from the technical perspective, or kind of like what strokes could mean. And then because I was obsessed with art history, because my professor at the time taught me contextual history, not just factual history, right? And I think there's a big difference between how people are taught history. If somebody just says slavery started in 1650 and Jamestown and all this other stuff and blah blah blah, okay, one ear out the other. You know it for a test, you forget about it for life. Contextual history is like slavery. Why'd that happen? What were the contributing factors that inspired this whole dehumanization project? What is it about the civilizations like the Dutch and the English and the Portuguese and the Spanish that were interacting with people in this way, and looking at them as not people but as property, as savages, as slaves, as workers, labor for their enlightenment. Once you get taught the context around stuff, it sticks into you more, because now you get motivation, you get narrative, you get the cast of characters that are a part of this thing, and of course you also get the factual history too. Right. But we learn by story. It's the reason why the Iliad, the Odyssey, and all these other things are like still present today, because of story, which has now become myth at this point. But you get the idea. So for me, I'm able to add context to work and to ask them really interesting questions around why they made what they made. And what I didn't realize was that it was positioning me to curate. And it got to a point to where I was talking about the work and promoting the work so much that folks were buying work based upon my recommendation. And that started to put me in a position to then leverage that weight to talk about my own work. And then my own work started to get bought up. And so for me, it was like, if I stayed dejected about me not being able to make a sale, I wouldn't have been able to channel a new skill, contribute to the space in a meaningful way, and get rewarded for it in the process. And so now at this point, I've built up so much of that goodwill over the past several months that now almost everything that I want to launch just happens, and it's nuts. Like,
oh my gosh, can we talk about this for a second? Because
yes.
I would love to just what has the experience been with Mint Fund and Black Hand for you? Because seeing the Black Hand mirror post in real time feels wild as a spectator, but what does it feel like for you?
Okay, I'm gonna reshare my screen again because
okay, cool.
Actually, I'll talk about Mint Fund first.
Okay.
Because what was really sick about Mint Fund was when we launched. A month later after we launched, we pushed out Bounty, which was to build the permissionless auction method, which is the foundation of auctions on Mirror, the foundations of auctions and auction houses on Zora. And of course, in a spiritual way, sort of it moved other platforms into thinking intentionally about permissionless things, permissionless ideologies, which is why Variable now has permissionless everything. We're a DAO now, we're self-governed, and we were governed by the community, and blah blah blah. And a lot of those concepts stemmed from a lot of the experimentation work that Zora, Mirror, and the Mint Fund had done in March. And the most meta thing was we sold our code on the auction method. And it was the first time that we actually had done this, and we had also built out splitting dynamic. So everyone
Gosh, this is so cool.
So everyone that participated in the auction, when we sold the auction, ETH got routed back to all those contributors as a thank you.
Wow.
And it became kind of like a really cool primitive for growth in the space. Mm-hmm. That split auction then parlayed into splits that Foundation uses. It now parlays into the splits that the Well's going to use. It's going to parlay into splits that Zora is going to eventually use, and that other people are going to use. And it's a very, very fun thing. So for us at Mint Fund, it was super exciting not to be able to just build access for artists, but to build tooling for artists too. And so that's one of the things that we're very, very excited about in the future, that we've talked about in our Rewind, that we're going to be a lot more aggressive at getting grants. We already have a few, one with a.k.a. That we're going to be pushing out very soon in Brazil. And then hopefully a few others that are going to be in the pipeline. I think we also have one with an amazing lady who's been representing Ethiopian artists. Is it Ethiopian or... Yes, Ethiopian artists, I'm sorry. And then, so that's at least 2 out of maybe like 4 grants we're going to issue this season. So that's the Mint Fund. Super excited about that. And then...
I'm just also noticing that the time that we're on the hour, I don't know if you're okay to go over a bit.
Yeah, I could talk for a few more minutes for sure.
Cool. Okay.
And then this thing was just like... So... We hit our funding goal the first minute we launched the crowdfund.
What?
Yeah, okay, so...
What?
Okay, so if we go through...
Oh my goodness.
If we go through the Etherscan... Let's go through all the transactions here. Let's go to the last.
Oh my goodness.
So what you'll see is we had 2 contributions, and then 60, and then 45 came right afterwards.
Oh my goodness, that is so incredible.
Yeah.
Did you have any inkling that was going to happen?
So I had an inkling that half of it was going to be made in the first minute. I didn't think all of it was going to be made in the first minute. We have a strategic partner in Lemnis Cap, who's done some really cool investment work. Their portfolio is pretty extensive, and they're interested in gaming, and they're interested in kind of the intersection between gaming culture and crypto. And as you can see, like, they have Async, they have FTX, who is the largest holder of the esports group TSM, and a few more things. And hopefully, I'm excited to see ours on here very, very soon. Can't wait for that to happen. We'll be right in the middle here, so that's gonna be fun. But yeah, I expected the 60. I did not expect the 45. And then shortly thereafter, we had a 55 put in, and then after that, we had a 37 ETH buy, and then a 10 ETH buy, and then the rest are like 8, 5, a good amount of 3s. Good amount of 1s, and then everything in between. My team is great, because shout out to my friend ATM, because he worked on every single NFT. So each one has its own lore associated with like this hand project thing. And we have like this very interesting like story that we're going to tell through our NFTs like over the next several seasons. So he snapped on the 1-of-1s, and then he also did such an amazing job with our editions, our open editions. Yeah. These got sold out so quick. So many people were upset. My DMs were on fire because people were like, "Why are the golds sold out already? I thought you said I had more time to put in the crowdfund." I said, yeah, the crowdfund is like at least 24 hours, but I can't predict how fast people are going to want these. They were like, you should have minted more. And I was like, I didn't anticipate us hitting the number we hit. I really didn't.
Wow.
I figured we were gonna hit at least one. We wanted to hit at least 100. Mm-hmm. Now, if we got there in a week, I was prepared to crowdfund for a week. Like, I was literally on, like, that was my plan, was to just do a week long. I'm on Twitter, just like going in.
Yeah.
We hit 100 the first 5 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
200 in 4 hours. And then just burned through. We had a technical issue with our contract, like midway through, like I think the 15th hour, like late at night. It was like maybe 2 a.m. till 8. Like, there was a thing where, and this happened a few times during the contract, where the funds raised would not render. But then we had a point in time where we were at like 250 and it didn't update that more was happening. And so at the same time, there were folks who wanted to get one of these NFTs and wasn't able to because there was something with the contract. So, but we figured out a way to like handle all this in our following post. We talked about how we're gonna like change that, but yeah, so it was interesting. But I feel like it would have gone even further had we not had that. But honestly, having a seed round in 24 hours is I'm still losing my mind that this even happened.
So talk me through like how this what you would have done, say this project existed outside of crypto, how you would have raised, or how someone else might raise funds for something versus like how you raised funds, and then like what that means in terms of like it being an investment or ownership or participation. How is it all different?
That's a good question. Okay, so like from what I've noticed before in the space when I was just dealing with DeFi stuff, I would notice crowdfunds were just like typical token sales, and then they would set a price, they would ask people to send ETH, and then they would get tokens as a result. And then some of that would be contributed into LP, and then a token would have a public sale afterwards. And at that point, tokenomics and everything would have to be sort of obviously adjusted and created prior to the sale, so everybody knows what's happening. In this context, though, because we're using a crowdfund contract that uncaps the tokens until the fund is closed, it's a lot harder to predict how many tokens you're actually going to have unless you're confident you're going to hit your goal. And if you hit your goal, then the other thing you have to consider is then, do you account for overage? And what does that look like? Because if your funding goal is 100 ETH, then the amount of tokens we would have generated that would have been given up to us afterwards would be a third of the tokens that we got that were created for us now. So because we had raised over $1 million, we were able to get at least 1 million plus tokens, plus the amount that was already allocated towards the crowdfund. And so our challenge was to figure out how could we build a tokenomic model that's uncapped. So for us, we thought of, let's just do a smaller sale of the actual total token supply that could be minted, and then we retain at least three quarters of it, so that when we do figure out a tokenomic model, we have enough tokens to move around, so that we can disperse things out to the community. We can build a better pie for everyone involved. Because what you can't really do in a crowdfund is ask people within the crowdfund, hey, we don't have enough tokens, can you give us some back so that we can disperse them out to other people? That it just doesn't make sense. So that's hence the 75% of the token supply was retained. But what we're able to do with that is our treasury has now over 1 million tokens. Our tokenomics now allow us to be very creative with how do we create more of a supply? How do we create how much is hit in our treasury? What about liquidity? What about strategic partners that like perhaps want to come in? Because the thing about esports and gaming culture, it takes a lot of bread to make a lot of these things happen. Like you don't see Overwatch League teams with a shoestring budget. They need as much as they can to make the best of it. And hopefully for us, being decentralized, we can figure out what we have plans to leverage all of crypto and the DeFi space to sort of like help us out, because it's not like we need to completely rely on tournament earnings and or sponsorships or endorsements. We have real kind of like interesting for-profit engines that can work for the benefit of our entire community. So I'm really excited to see kind of like how all this stuff sort of comes together. But yeah, I think the Mirror crowdfund is very, very good because it's an easy kit to stand up a DAO structure. And it takes the pressure off of having to kind of figure out how to do a token sale without towing the line of is it a security or not. Like this is very, very driven towards the idea of you're backing a project that's going to allow us as a community to do really cool things, but this is not an investment insofar as you're expecting profit off of a token, but this is a key that says here's your membership related to this project, and so you're going to earn rewards as a result of it. So very, very fun and an interesting experiment for sure. But yeah, this was nuts and honestly something unexpected, but I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to kind of just keep up with how you're doing everything on Mirror, because I feel like you are Mirror is so innovative in itself, and the ability of the platform to kind of respond to the creators on the platform. And I think you are definitely one of those people who is kind of like pushing it really to the edge. And I'm so excited to kind of just like keep up with how all of this evolves. And I know I've kept you so far over time, and I'm so grateful for your time, Ameer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much too. I'm very happy to have done this, and if there's anything else, you just let me know.